Hello everyone and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Rich Forrester stood by the window, his broad shoulders tensed, gazing out at the fading light. Brooke Logan, Eric's wife, sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands gripped tightly in her lap, her eyes darting nervously between Eric and the others in the room. Liam Spencer walked near the doorway, his jaw tensed and his normally placid attitude replaced by a restless intensity. Steffi, Thorne, and Hope were also present, each with their own burdens and questions regarding what Eric had summoned them to hear. The room was a tableau of tense silence, the type that comes before a storm. Eric's voice when he spoke was quiet yet determined. "I've lived a long life," he said, piercing through the silence like a razor. "I have established an empire, a family, and a legacy. But none of it matters if I depart this world with lies still hanging between us." The room became more quieter, as if that were possible. Brooke's breath caught, and Ridge glanced away from the window, his gaze sharpening. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Ridge inquired, his voice raspy and uneasy. Eric raised a hand to silence him. "Let me continue, Ridge. This isn't easy and I won't be able to say it twice." He sipped his bourbon, the liquid shaking in the glass. "I've concealed something from you all, something I promised I'd keep to my grave. But I can't. Not anymore." Liam paused, his gaze fixated on Eric. "What is it, Eric?" "Whatever it is, we can manage it." Eric met Liam's gaze, and for a brief moment, his eyes shone with thankfulness. But it swiftly disappeared, replaced by a deep melancholy that seemed to age him even more. "You might not feel that way when I'm done," he replied gently. "This concerns your mother, Liam. And about me." The room appeared to constrict, with the air becoming thinner. Brooke's fists tightened in her lap, while Steffi's forehead furrowed. "Your mother?" Brooke inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. "What has this got to do with Liam's mother?" Eric's eyelids closed briefly, as if he was drawing on his last reserves of power. When he opened them, they were soaked with unshed tears. "She wasn't just Liam's mother," he explained. "She was my daughter." The words fell like a thunderclap. Liam's face turned pale, his mouth opened but no sound came out. Ridge took a step forward, balling his hands into fists. "What the hell are you saying, Dad? That's not conceivable." "It is possible," Eric replied, his voice breaking. "And it is true. Elizabeth, Liam's mother, was my daughter. My first child. Born before any of you, even before I knew Stephanie." He stared at Brooke, whose eyes were wide with surprise. "I was just 20 when I met Clara, Elizabeth's mother. It was a short thing, a mistake I buried out of guilt. Clara raised Elizabeth alone, while I stayed abroad. I sent money, but I stayed away." Liam's voice burst through, harsh and strained. "Are you saying you're my father?" The word father came out as a curse, tinged with skepticism and treachery. Eric shook his head, his hands trembling even more frantically. "No, Liam. I am not your father. I am your grandfather. Elizabeth never mentioned me to you, did she? She despised me for abandoning her, and I can't blame her. But when she had you, she only reached out to me once. She was sick and dying and she asked me to watch out for you. I promised her I would, but I let her down again. I kept my distance and let you grow up without knowing the truth." Ridge's expression was one of rage and confusion. "Why haven't you told us? For years, Dad, we thought Liam was merely someone we worked with and cared about. You welcomed him into our family without telling us." "I was a coward," Eric confessed, his voice scarcely audible. "I believed I was protecting you all. Protecting the family name and business. But I was merely protecting myself from the embarrassment of my actions. I thought I could make amends by giving Liam a position at Forrester Creations and keeping an eye on him from a distance. But that wasn't enough. It was never enough." Brooke burst into tears silently. She reached for Liam's hand but he backed away, his eyes burning with grief and rage. "You knew who I was," Liam replied, his voice rising. "You knew, and you made me believe I was alone in this world. You led me to believe that my mother was all I had, and that when she died I would be alone. Have you any idea how that felt?" Eric lowered his head, his shoulders falling under the weight of Liam's remarks. "I know," he whispered. "And I apologize, Liam. I'm so sorry, Steffi said, her hands shaking as she pointed to Eric. How could you do it? How could you have lied to all of us? To Liam, Ridge, or to me? We are your family, Grandad. We deserve to know. I thought I was sparing you, Eric admitted, his voice shaking. I feared the truth would drive us apart. But I see now that the lies have made things worse. Hope, who had been silent until now, murmured gently, her voice shaking. Liam, I don't know what to say. Does this change everything? Liam snapped, turning to face her. Does it alter anything, Hope? Because it doesn't erase the reality that I grew up without a family and had no idea who I was. It doesn't change the fact that he pointed at Eric, selected his pride over mine. Ridge moved between them, his voice low but forceful. That's enough, Liam. He's trying to make this right. Liam shouted, his voice reverberating around the room. How can you make this right, Ridge? He let my mother die alone. He let me grow up believing I was nothing and nobody. And now he believes a confession will cure it? Brooke stood with her hands spread and her voice imploring. Liam, please. Eric is unwell. He's trying to do the right thing before it's too late. Liam's eyes were filled with sadness. Is it too late? Brooke, it's been too late for my entire life. He had years to tell me, years to be present. And now what? He's dying, so he may unburden his soul while leaving me to pick up the pieces? Eric's head snapped up and his eyes met Liam's. I don't expect forgiveness, he replied calmly. I do not deserve it. But I needed you to understand the truth. I needed you to know you are a Forrester, Liam. You've always been. The words hung in the air, weighty and definite. Liam staggered back as if struck, breathing in short, harsh breaths. Brooke reached for him again, and this time he did not back away, despite his body being hard with emotion. Ridge's expression softened, and the wrath gave way to a deep, painful sadness. He crossed the room and knelt alongside his father, resting his hand on his shoulder. Dad, Ridge replied, his voice full of sorrow. Why didn't you entrust us with this? Why didn't you let us assist you transport it? Eric's hand clutched Ridge's, his hold weak but urgent. Because I was afraid, he said. I am afraid of losing you all. I'm afraid of what it will entail for this family. But I understand now that I've lost more by being silent. The room fell silent again, with the only sounds being the crackling of the fire and Brooke and Steffi's faint weeping. Liam stood apart, his back to the wall and his gaze locked on the ground. The truth had shattered something inside him, and he wasn't sure he could rebuild. He was a Forrester, true, but what did it signify now? Did it signify anything? Over the next few days, the Forrester estate became haunted. Liam avoided the family and went to his apartment, where he sat in the dark, repeating Eric's comments over and over. He remembered his mother, Elizabeth, who had loved him fiercely despite her own anguish and had never spoken about her father. Had she realized how much Eric's absence pained her? Did she die hating him? The questions gnawed at Liam, making him restless and hollow. Brooke and Ridge attempted to reach out, but Liam's silence proved impenetrable. Steffi, too, grappled with the information. Her allegiance to her grandfather pitted against her sympathy for Liam. Hope, ever the mediator, attempted to mediate, but even she couldn't find the words to bridge the chasm that had formed between them all. Meanwhile, Eric became weaker. The confession had taken away a bit of his strength that he couldn't restore. He spent his days in his study, surrounded by sketches and designs that had once defined him, but now seemed like relics from a past he no longer knew. He wrote letters to each of his children and one to Liam, but he wasn't sure if Liam would ever read them. Liam showed up to the estate one evening as the sun fell below the horizon, casting the sky in melancholy tones. He didn't knock or make an announcement. He simply strolled into Eric's study and stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes black with unresolved anguish. Eric looked up, shocked, and indicated to the chair across from him. Liam, he spoke softly. I didn't expect you to come. Liam did not sit. I almost didn't, he said, his voice low. But I needed to see you. I needed to understand. Eric nodded, his gaze never leaving Liam. Ask me anything, he stated. I owe you that much. Liam's jaw hardened, and it appeared he was about to turn and leave. But then he said, his voice full of emotion. Did she know you loved her? My mother. Did she know? Eric's eyes welled with tears and he nodded. I told her once at the end. I do not know if she believed me. I'm not sure if she could. But Liam, I adored her. I loved her and I love you. Liam's breath caught and he glanced aside, his fists clenched. I don't know what to do with that, he admitted ultimately. I don't know how to be part of this family when I've spent my whole life on the outside. You don't have to decide now, Eric added in a soft voice. But you are here, Liam. You're here and that's a start. They sat silently for a long time, the weight of their common history resting on them. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. A weak thread of connection that could, with time, grow into something stronger. Outside, the leaves continued to fall, each one a reminder of time passing. The foresters were broken, but not beyond repair. And as the fire burnt low in the hearth, spreading long shadows across the room, there was a calm optimism that they might be able to mend. I never imagined that one afternoon could change everything, but here I was, sitting in the spacious living room of Forrester Creations, my hands quivering as I gripped an untouched cup of tea. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if it knew the storm was going to hit. Eric stood in the midst of the room, his face pallid, his eyes extraordinarily soft but veiled with a sadness I had never seen before. Ridge and Liam had already arrived, the hostility between them apparent. Even in this house with so many walls, it felt as if the walls were holding their breath, waiting for him to speak. Eric cleared his throat, and the sound was more powerful than it should have been. Brooke, Ridge, Liam, he began, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying across the room like a gust of wind. There is something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago. A shiver ran down my spine. I had a dreadful premonition. Somehow deep down I knew this was not going to be a modest confession. Eric has always been a rock of strength, an anchor in the midst of this family's turmoil. If he was weakening right now, it suggested that something enormous was about to happen. Liam, usually quick to respond, leaned forward, his blue eyes wide with mistrust. Eric, what is it? He demanded. His voice cracked, revealing the dread he had tried so hard to hide. Ridge's jaw tightened, and his fists clenched at his sides. I could see a tempest rising behind his placid appearance. Eric's hands trembled as he folded them in his lap. I have made mistakes, he said hesitantly. Mistakes I did not want any of you to know about. Mistakes could change everything you thought you knew about this family. His voice wavered, and I felt a part of me crumble. Dad, what do you mean? Liam's yell was sudden, loud, and urgent. What are you talking about? Ridge leaned forward, his normally cool visage twisted in anger. Eric, stop teasing us. Please tell us. Please. I could hardly breathe. Eric stared at me, and his eyes softened, revealing an emotion that grieved me to behold. Brooke, there's something you should know about the past. About our family. I've been keeping this secret for decades, and it's time you all knew the truth. My heart beat in my chest. I gripped my tea so hard that the porcelain cracked under my fingers. I had no idea what was going to happen, but the thought of losing all I had ever believed in our family was already choking me. Eric's gaze turned towards Ridge. Ridge, you are more than just my son. You have a brother. I have never told you this. Another son. I had to give up my son for adoption when I was young. The room froze. Time itself seems to stop. I could not breathe. Ridge's face became pale, and his eyes widened like saucers. Liam looked as if he had been punched in the gut. What are you saying? Ridge muttered, his voice shaking. I have a brother. Eric nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes. Yes. And you've just met him unknowingly years ago. His voice broke. It's Thomas. I felt like someone had slammed the door on my chest, leaving me gasping for oxygen. Ridge's brother was Thomas, whom everyone adored as a cousin, friend, and nephew. We'd been living with only half the truth all along. My hands dropped to my lap, shivering violently. Liam stood abruptly and paced. How could you hide this? For how long? His rage was strong, but underlying it, I could see the tremble of heartache. We trusted you, Eric. Eric swallowed hard. I tried to protect him. Protect all of you. Ridge's face was pale. The timing was never right, and I feared it would destroy everything. His voice trembled to barely a whisper. Is everything I thought I knew about myself and my life a lie? I reached out automatically, laying my hand on his arm and feeling the tension spread throughout his body. Rid. I couldn't form words. How do you console someone whose very identity has been shattered? Eric's voice was hardly audible now, a murmur of sadness. I understand this is awful. I never intended to hurt you. I merely wanted to keep you safe. Then something occurred. Eric's hand fell limply to his side. His respiration became irregular. My heart froze as I realized he was having a heart attack. Dad! I exclaimed, lunging at him. Liam was already moving, attempting to balance him, but Ridge was still, the shock stuck in his feet. I heard the sirens in my brain before anyone phoned for assistance. Everything slowed down, the room, the air, and our breathing. Eric looked up at me, and despite his anguish, he smiled softly. Brooke, I'm sorry. For everything. I love you, always. I held him, cradling his head in my lap, tears streaming down my face. Ridge knelt beside me, shivering furiously. Liam's voice cracked as he yelled for assistance. Come on, Dad. Stay with us. But Eric's eyes started to close. Slowly. Peacefully. The confession had sapped him of all strength. I felt a scream erupt from the depths of my soul. A sound that would never go because the moment was too sacred and definitive. He exhaled again, a small smile remaining, and then stillness. The room descended into anarchy. Ridge sank to his knees and sobbed freely. Liam's face was buried in his hands, shivering from despair. And I could scarcely breathe. My chest felt like it had been torn apart. Eric was gone. My love, my rock, and the anchor of my family was no longer with me. We stayed there for what felt like hours, suspended in grief. Ridge's cries boomed through the walls, Liam's shaky hands gripped his head, and I sat rigid and numb. The tragic truth of Eric's confession lingered over us like a shadow that would never go. Despite the pain, a faint, delicate thread of hope began to emerge. Ridge eventually looked up, his cheeks smeared with tears. Brooke, Liam, we need to support each other. Liam nodded slowly, brushing away tears. He trusted us to convey the truth immediately. Eric wished for honesty and family, even in death. His words felt like a gift to me. The carnage he had disclosed had the potential to completely destroy us, but it might also bring us closer together. We'll get through this, I said, my voice shaking. We have to, for him. As the shock faded into sadness, we began the healing process. Ridge reached out to Thomas, the blood tie connecting them after years of isolation and confusion. Despite his anger and sadness, Liam took the initiative in organizing Eric's memorial, honoring the man who was both flawed and great. Despite my heavy heart, I kept close to them and learned that hope may grow even in the most barren soil. Eric's final remarks, while terrible, forced us to confront our facts. In doing so, we discovered a fragile togetherness, a bond stronger than lies or secrets. I'll never forget Eric's confession, the moment his life slipped from our grip. I'll never forget the tears, shouting, and heartbreak. But I will also recall how we clung to each other later, understanding that love can survive catastrophe. Even with grief, there is hope. And when I stood at his grave weeks later, holding Ridge and Liam close, I uttered a pledge to the man who had been the center of our lives. We will remember you, Eric. We will carry your truth and love. And we will keep this family united. Always. That was the first time I felt a glimmer of calm. Not a pain-free serenity, but one formed of acceptance, forgiveness, and the strong bonds of family. Even after he was gone, Eric's final words would linger on in our hearts, influencing the way we loved and survived.